Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Senate Education. It is Friday, February 26th. For those of you who tune in and to Senate Education every day, please know that next week we will not be here, so you will have to watch reruns. We are in town meeting week, so senators will be with constituents, getting caught up, etc. So today we are going to start by returning to libraries and the work we've done on libraries with miscellaneous education. We are then going to move toward looking at a number of different bills that hopefully we'll be able to move today, realizing that they have, it looks like, multiple stops, some of them, after taking a look more carefully. It looks like all of them will be going to appropriations, and it looks like one will also be making a visit to finance. So with that, the only other thing I think I need to mention is that we are working hard to put the schedule together for the week when we return, and a few things are already plugged in. Senator Terenzini made the good suggestion to have the Chancellor of the Vermont State Colleges come in to give us an update on their most recent vote and talk a little bit about steps moving forward. So that is on our calendar, I believe, already. Additionally, we did receive a bill from Senate Agriculture today, S-100, that looks at universal school meals. I believe I have asked the chair of Natural Resources and Energy to we don't need to have the bill committed unless somebody would like to, but it looks like the weatherization bill may have some certification programming in for people doing weatherization. So I think this committee needs to see that section of it at the very least. And we also will need to get some language to Senate appropriations, language for after school program or for summer programming, basically. In addition, we'll have H81 on our plates, which we will have to make a decision on. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later today. So with that, Mr. Unrath, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. You wrote to us, and Senator Chinden was kind enough to remind us of your email. And so welcome to Senate Education. And we're talking about what is now the miscellaneous education bill. In that miscellaneous education bill, we are looking at a working group on the status of libraries in Vermont. So with that, the floor is yours, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks, Senators, for paying some attention to this bill. I appreciate it. I do understand that our state librarian, Jason Broughton, spoke with you all yesterday about moving the language forward as it was. And if that's Jason's opinion after having reviewed what I sent along, then I fully support what Jason has decided. I think that he has a good overview of what's going on in the state, and I wouldn't want to contradict his perspective. I did feel it was important to point out the work that the Green Mountain Library Consortium has done in terms of bringing libraries together, because they've done things like bring ebooks to the state of Vermont. They've brought a shared catalog that 100 libraries use. They've brought a courier service that now the state runs. So there has been some work on the ground by volunteer librarians to do some networking together with our resources. All of this has been organic and from the ground up. And so that's why I wanted to send that on, because I think it's really important that we do work with them and touch base. But as far as the language of what was in S26, I am perfectly okay with going forward with it as it is. And I think that the important thing for me as the president of the Vermont Library Association, and also as the director of the library in Shelburne, is for you to know that librarians fully support this bill. We think it's great to shine a light on the work we're doing. And I fully support the bill. And I think that in whatever form it ends up in, it will be a wonderful thing to be able to see the work that we're doing And I had just a couple of reminders, if I could take another minute.
Please.
One is that libraries are the most visited cultural institution out of more than 10, according to a recent Gallup study. So people come to libraries more than they go to the movies, more than they go to sporting events, more than they go to any other cultural activity. People use libraries. Last year, we had 5 million visits, and we checked out more than 5 million items at all of our school and academic and public libraries. So we are a heavily used institution. And then my other point is that libraries were green before it was cool. So you hear about the sharing of economy, but we've been sharing our space, sharing our resources, and sharing our expertise for going on 200 years now in terms of public libraries. It's something we've always done, and the rest of the world has kind of caught up to that idea. So I think it's important to recognize that libraries are on the forefront of that sort of shared resources and are actually a highly green and environmentally friendly organization. So those are just a couple of points I wanted to add to the testimony that I already heard given. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or let you get on to your business that you have at hand.
Thank you, Mr. Unrath. That's very helpful. Appreciate the reminder of what how incredibly important libraries are to the landscape and to the people of Vermont. Also appreciate your support of the bill. Please do know that, as I mentioned to you earlier, as it makes its way through the process, the House, if you do have a change of heart in any way, the House can certainly listen to those concerns, questions, and make any necessary amendments. So that's something else just to keep in mind. But we appreciate all of your work, and we appreciate you being with us today. Committee, any questions? Okay, seeing none.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Hooker, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Unrath, for your work. And I'm just curious, you have 15 members of your consortium, and is this all voluntary membership? You talked about connecting 100 libraries. And so how does your consortium work and connect with
So the Green Mountain Library Consortium has over 100 members, and it's a purchasing consortium first and foremost. So we pool money that's locally raised money from our municipalities or our institutional libraries. And then we buy things like a shared catalog or ebooks or pay into a courier service. Okay. They do have an executive board, and then they have membership meetings. But overall, it's a way to pool our resources and be a lot more efficient in terms of what we're spending. And the state also does this with some of the money that comes either from taxes or from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. But this is an all-volunteer organization that sort of came up organically when we realized a dozen years ago that we needed to start offering ebooks to people in Vermont.
Okay, so. And I had seen the number 15 on your website, and it must have been the board members or something that I was looking at.
Oh, yeah, it's over 100 libraries, and it serves roughly 2/3 of all Vermonters are served by one of those things that the Green Mountain Library Consortium provides.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Unrath. Very much appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Mr. Desmarais, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm fine.
Good. Would you be so kind as to take us through the miscellaneous ed bill as we have it? Be a big help.
Yep,
and,
certainly.
And I think my only, I think that's it. So if senators have it, it's posted.
I've got it right here. I just want to make sure I've got the right one. 1.2.
And I don't know if there have been any. Oh, it's only draft 1.2. So the only change was related to health and some another little language change. But if you would just give us a broad overview and then highlight those couple of changes, I know senators have seen this language quite a bit.
Okay. It's coming up in 1 minute. Shift it up there. Okay, this one here. Okay. Okay. So, can people see this a little bit bigger?
Maybe a little bit bigger. I have mine in front of me, but that's perfect for me. If
Okay.
that works for others.
Okay. Okay, so for the record, Jim Dameray, we're walking through your miscellaneous education bill. It does 3 things. Deals with the libraries, addresses the cultural liaisons, and it addresses the menstrual products and wellness policy. So the first part of this is libraries, and this is unchanged since the bill was introduced. So I won't walk through this, but it's the same as you've seen before. Goes on quite a ways. It's same here, all library. Okay. Then we get into the cultural liaisons, and this is the same as you saw it before. No changes here. So we're adding this new permission, if you will, for towns and school districts to jointly fund cultural liaisons. And then wellness program. So we've been through this recently. I did change this definition. Senator Hooker was very perceptive and noticed that the definition of comprehensive health already includes nutrition. So no reason to repeat that word. So I've taken out that word. And going on to menstrual products, we just changed the term. We got rid of hygiene. So wherever you see this, I haven't highlighted them everywhere, but everywhere it's been changed to menstrual products. And that is it.
Okay.
Okay, so that was my question. So you've changed it from hygiene products to menstrual products throughout.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Senator Hooker.
So, in relative to that, today we passed a bill that would exempt feminine hygiene products from taxes. Are these terms used interchangeably? And are we we're not going to run into any trouble by using menstrual products in this bill and feminine hygiene products in the other, because we were tied to a group that oversees the taxing of those types of products?
I don't think so, because it's not tied to the tax policy itself.
Okay.
Jim?
And I'm curious to know if the terms are used interchangeably.
In statute?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, clearly, right?
Well, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure. I haven't worked in the tax bill, but do you know whether they define the term feminine hygiene products?
I didn't see that in the bill, but let me just see.
It's not defined in the bill. And it's the only reason it's there is, and has to stay there, is that's the way it is. That's the terminology in the compact.
In the streamlined tax.
Yeah, in the
Agreement.
streamlined tax. I call it a compact. This is internal to schools, and
Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah, no, I get your question. I think it's a good question. The only question would be for Jim is when these are tax exempt products, will it include menstrual products in the same way it would feminine hygiene products?
That would be a question, I think, for the tax attorney, more than me.
Well, maybe we could just say that menstrual products will. We put a little definition in there. I don't want to put the word tax in there, then it goes to
Yeah,
finance.
this will be going to finance, if it's any comfort.
okay.
It needs to go to finance because of the relationship between the, at least when I was in finance, we would see things as it relates to the cultural liaisons and, sharing, what we're trying to do there. So they will have an opportunity to eye this, as will appropriations.
Okay.
So we do have time. And even we, Senator Hooker, for what it's worth, even we, I suspect, would have a significant amount of time. I don't think this will see the floor until late March.
Oh, okay.
Only because it has at least 2 other stops.
Okay. All right. Just, don't want to run into trouble later on finding out that we
Absolutely.
used the wrong terminology. And I don't want to see hygiene brought back.
Right. No, I agree. So if, for example, as we explore and other committees explore it, I think we can always amend it accordingly. Jim, do you mind taking the screen down just so I
Sure, yeah, of course.
Other questions for Mr. Demaray? Senator Pershling.
I was just going to say that I don't think we need to worry about the connection to the tax because I think all schools are nonprofits. So at least the ones we have in Vermont. So they're not going to be taxed anyway. So
That's a great point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, I would welcome a motion to move the miscellaneous education bill. Senator Lyons moves. Makes the
I
motion.
will-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I move that we vote on and send the miscellaneous education bill as amended to the full Senate.
We don't need a second in the committee, do we? I don't think so. No.
Is there a draft? Is there a draft that we should be identifying, Jim?
Draft
Yes.
1.2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So draft 1.2 of the miscellaneous education bill to the full Senate.
Senator Chittenden.
Well, be glad to second if needed, but I have a question. So we're going to the full Senate and not to the Finance Committee. That's how it works.
What will happen is similar to today. It'll be introduced on the floor, similar to what happened with the agriculture bill, and then it will be sent automatically to appropriations because there's an appropriation in there, and then from there it'll go to finance or vice versa. There's nothing we need to do, though. We don't need to send it. That's what, and just so you know, Secretary Bloomer will take a look at this and he'll direct it accordingly. Great question. Any other questions, comments, discussion? If not, Senator Perchlik, would you call the roll?
yes, Senator Chittenden,
Aye.
Senator Hooker,
Yes.
Senator Lyons,
Yes.
Senator Terenzini,
Yes.
Senator Perchlik votes yes, and the chair, Senator Campion.
Yes. So 600. Is there someone who's interested in reporting the bill? If you would, Senator Hooker? You're muted, but
If Senator Chittenden didn't want to do it, we talked a little bit about this, I thought.
there's always the possibility also of, I know Senate last year shared some bills, I think, where people, one person started, the other continued, if that's something you'd like to do.
I think it'd be great for Senator Chittenden to get his feet wet.
I think, yeah, if Senator Chin is comfortable with it, to report the bill. And just so you know, I am happy to work with you as much as you'd like to write a floor report, as I know Jim is happy to give you any pointers as well. Yes, please.
Always happy. It's not a matter of wanting. I just want it to pass. So if that would be better done with somebody else, happy to yield. But my question is, would this be reported right away, or does it go to finance first and then come back and be reported? I don't get it.
It's a great question. So it'll go to appropriations and finance, and then it'll end up on the floor. So what you'll end up doing is either of those committees may amend this bill or may not, and you will probably be in a couple of weeks, it'll be brought up on the floor after both of those committees have seen it. Knowing that appropriations and finance have an extra week to look at these kinds of things, you might not have to report it for 2 to 3 weeks, but I would just recommend spending a little time over town meeting week, just kind of gearing up, and I'll also start to type up some things and send them your way to be helpful. Senator Hooker.
And I just want you to know, Senator Chittenden, that I volunteered because I think this is a great bill. And I think that you're going to have a fun time reporting it.
Yeah, sure. No, it is a great bill.
We all want to do this bill.
Right,
Don't-
we all want to
yeah,
do
we all wanna
this.
do
So
it.
count
That's-
yourself lucky, Senator.
Yeah,
Chittenden.
you be,
Okay, thank you, Senator Chittenden. So, Mr. Demarais, and for Jeannie, what do you need from Senator Chittenden at this point?
I need to strip out the highlighting in this bill.
Yep,
So when I have a break, I'll do that and send that back to Jeannie for processing.
great. And then Jeannie, what will you need?
The process is I have to send the record of action to the clerk, who will confirm the vote, the accuracy of the vote as I've tallied it. Senator Perchik will send me an email confirming the accuracy of the vote as I tallied it. Then I send it to places. The reporter will email John Bloomer and Vanessa Davidson with the final version of the bill and the vote. But I can talk to Senator Chittenden about that later.
That'd be great. Okay, terrific. Okay, thank you. Okay. School Discipline Advisory Council, which also will have a stop in appropriations. I do not think it will go to judiciary, but it will go to approps for certain. We're looking at draft 4.1. And Mr. Demarais, if you wouldn't mind taking us through it. We worked on this and got perhaps close to finalizing things. Let's have a look.
Okay. So let me get the bigger if I can. Oh, too big. Okay. So again, for the record, Jim Demarais, Legislative Counsel, we're walking through S16, which is the act creating the School Discipline Advisory Council. There are not too many changes here, so let's just go through and see what changed. Okay, first of all, this isn't changed, but before you pass this out of committee, this bracket needs to come out. So I'm not sure what to do about that. That's the 15,000 is for the per diem reimbursement, and there was an open question as to whether the task force or AOE needs additional funding to carry out the duties of the task force. So that's a unresolved point.
So
Senator Campion, can I ask a question?
absolutely, Senator Terenzini.
Thanks. And I apologize for personal reasons. I had to miss a committee meeting or two this week, and I'm sure you guys covered it. But that $15,000 I noticed, is that $15,000 total for the committee members to draw down from? That's not $15,000 per committee member, right?
No, that's the total amount. I think you've got 20 members of the committee, and basically it's a charge of, and you have, I think it's eight meetings. I can't remember, but it's just math. So it's 20 members times $125 per meeting.
Okay. So, okay.
Times the number of meetings. Yeah.
Yeah. So the commissioners would get paid $125 a meeting. It's not $15,000 stipend per commissioner.
Yeah, correct. They won't get paid $125. They'll be paid per diem, I think of 50, and the rest is for reimbursement for travel. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Jim, would you say a little bit more about what exactly are you feeling is, you mentioned something we still need to determine.
Well, the appropriation is only for this, but if we go down to line 6.
Yep.
And for expenses incurred by the task force in carrying out its duties. Go back up to its duties. It's got a lot of data to deal with. So it's analyzing. Okay, so duties are here. So reviewing various things, and then you come on to analyze data. So here's all the data they have to analyze here. And then, yeah, so it's really the data part of the job where they need some support for that. I guess the AOE will be preparing the data for them. That's covered. So here you have secretary getting all the data together for them for these years. So for what, 13 to 19 for 6 years approximately. So it's not as if they have to collect it, but they have to analyze it. And the open point here was, do they need some further resources to help them with that? I assume the agency will help them anyway with that. So maybe not, but I'm not sure.
So you're saying that an outstanding question in your mind is whether or not the agency is going to assist them with this data collection.
They will assist with the collection.
Yes.
Right here. It's all the work done to analyze the data. There's going to be a lot of it to analyze. And do they need help in that process?
Okay, can you say a little bit more? Because this is what your concern is exactly. So that they might not have the staff, that they might have to hire outside of the agency.
I don't really have a concern.
Okay.
I'm just noticing that the draft has had this language in it for a long time about expenses incurred for carrying out duties, but it's never been defined as to what they actually need for that, or if they need that at all.
I see. Okay, then it sounds like you're recommending that we hear from the agency on this language.
Or you have a choice, right? I mean, you could just take it out for now and it could get picked up later in the process. It's very stops along the way. You could wait to hear from the agency. Yeah.
I mean, I would prefer to wait to hear from the agency, but again, this doesn't have to. Senator Persick, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. The way I read it before was that if there's any of the $15,000 left over after paying the per diems and expenses to the commissioners, that the task force / the agency would be able to use some for any other expenses. But I don't know what those expenses actually would be incurred by the task force. So I'm okay with taking it out or waiting to hear if AOE was thinking that they were going to somehow, that 15,000 in brackets might change based on expenses incurred by the task force that were beyond per diems and travel mileage.
I think you're right that there will be room in that 15,000, given the fact that we're working remotely. So a part of that money won't be spent and could be used for other things.
Senator Hooker.
But Jim, I'm sorry, go ahead. Senator Perchlik, did you want to finish?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say that's been my experience on these. That a lot of people don't take it. So you need to put the maximum amount in there, but people that are getting paid to be there can't take the per diems, and a lot of people don't bother with it filling out the paperwork. So there usually is money left over.
But
Senator Hooker.
if it's a question of analyzing the data, like I have no idea how much it costs to have data analyzed. Who does the analyzing? Who's responsible for paying for that?
Yeah, you're asking me?
I'm
Actually,
asking,
what I think would be good, since Mr. Desmarais is raising this for the first time, I think, why don't we start from the beginning, Jim? Why don't you take everybody through the bill? It'll be a good refresher for everybody, also for Senator Terenzini, and let's not bounce around too much. So let's just go through the whole thing as a good review. This is an important step if we take it.
So we've got the task force being created in subsection A, working with the agency to make recommendations to end suspensions and expulsions for all but the most serious student behaviors, and collect and analyze data. So remember, this is a combination of the Racial Equity Task Force recommendation, which is the part here about making recommendations to end suspensions and expulsions for all but the most serious student behaviors. And then you have sort of serious language that he had proposed about analyzing data. So that's what this part is here. There's like two main focuses of attention.
Okay, so just hold on, Jim. Let's take our time here. So again, we have the task force. Why don't you bring us through the membership?
Yep, membership is up to 20, not more than 20 members, appointed by the secretary, who shall be Vermont residents, and the balanced representation of educators, administrators, high school students, special educators, parents, students, school board members, and members of community groups.
Right. Membership diversity.
Yep. Yep. So seek to have a
Question.
racially diverse membership and
Question.
include.
Yep. Senator Lyons.
Did we ever talk about having someone from the Department of Health on this? I'm just as we're looking at this and we're talking about student behaviors and issues related to what's going on with kids. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey is something that might be helpful. Now, maybe it's not a person, but maybe it's a access to at some point in here. Maybe I'm jumping ahead then to information that might be available on youth risk behaviors, because the Department of Health has that information based on school year, based on age, and also school. So I'm thinking out loud, but I think that might be a neat link to put in just in case it doesn't happen organically.
To make sure that the committee itself
Yeah.
accesses that youth risk behavior survey.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, so powers and duties, again, working with the agency to make recommendations and suspensions, etc. And then following specific tasks. So the first 4 are from the Equity Racial Task Force recommendations, reviewing in-school services and availability of these services that are available to support students who otherwise face exclusion or discipline. Recommend additional or more uniform in-school services that should be available to students who are under 8 and all other students. 3, define the most serious behaviors that, after considering all other alternatives and supports, should remain eligible for suspension or expulsion. And 4, identify best practices, practice procedures that minimize law enforcement contacts.
Jim, just
And
so
then
you
from
know,
5 on, this is
Jim,
the
if you could speak a little bit closer to the mic, you're in and out quite a bit.
Yep. I'm sorry. Turn away. Okay. Is that better?
Much better, thanks.
Okay. So 5 on are the ones from Senator Sears. So analyze on a school district and approved independent school basis the available data and data collection processes regarding suspensions and expulsions, and identify, collect, and analyze additional data necessary to inform the work of the task force, including the total number of instances of expulsions and suspensions in each grade operated by the district or approved independent school, the total number of students in each grade operated by the district or approved independent school were expelled or suspended, and the number of instances of expulsion or suspension or both for each student, the duration of each instance of expulsion and suspension, the infraction for which each expulsion and suspension was imposed, and each instance of referral to local law enforcement authorities or the juvenile justice system. And then recommend changes to the types of data collected and the data collection processes regarding suspensions and expulsions as necessary for the collection of all appropriate data related to school discipline, and review how other states address exclusionary discipline. The report's due this year in November to you, and I'll be shared with Vermont educators, etc. The secretary calls the meeting by August 1st. Not more than 6 times. Has the assistance of the AOE. So back to this question about what support they need, it might be the agency has enough resources to help them through this process. I don't know. And then compensation reimbursement is just standard language. And here comes the appropriation. So when we're talking about line 6, carrying out its duties will be to analyze all that data coming in, and that data will be coming in from the secretary. So secretary here will collect and distribute to the members all this data for 6 years worth of 6 years worth of data. That's it.
Questions? Senator Lyons?
Yeah, so the concern that Jim was expressing earlier is probably a legitimate concern. So we have all the data. We're getting a report. And do we ask for recommendations later on? I think we talked about this a little bit. We do ask for recommendations. Yeah, okay. I thought we had. Okay. I'm good for now.
Okay.
I mean, you could just increase the appropriation by $5,000 or something just to help cover expenses. And if it's not used, it'll be reverted back.
I mean, I think approps is going to be the ones that really are going to be digging into that piece, Senator Perchlik.
A question on a different part.
Yeah, go ahead.
When in the two questions. One is on the makeup of the committee. Number 2, line 19. It says administrators. Do we want to be more specific? I mean, administrators could be pretty broad. I wondered if we would rather say superintendents or something.
Or principals.
Or principals. I mean, we have, school administrators. Does that go without saying that it's the school?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, I guess for me, I like school administrators because it could be dean of students. Some schools will have a dean of students. Some would have director of something else. How do people feel about school administrator? Senator Perchik, do you feel that's specific enough?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And my other comment is on the powers and duties on the next page, line 9, where it says the task force shall, in conjunction with the agency of education. It does seem like, that we're setting up the task force to be its own entity. It can't really spend money or anything. So, kind of to the question about whether if we gave them money, how they'd spend it, they wouldn't really be able to spend it because they're not a real entity. So since the agency is staffing them basically, I don't know, if they had expenses, it would be part of their budget. We wouldn't need to put it in here, I guess, unless they said that was required. It struck me as a little interesting that the task force is going to do it in conjunction with the agency, but the agency secretary is a member of the task force. I didn't know where that, if anybody else thought that was strange the way that's worded.
Say a little bit more in terms of.
Well, it's the task force issuing the report, but but its recommendations is in conjunction with the agency. I guess is everything underneath that line where it says the task force shall in conjunction with the agency of education, and then it has a sentence and then a whole bunch of numbered points. Is everything after that being in conjunction? And when you do it in conjunction, does that mean they each kind of like vote, or it just seems like other times it's just the task force shall do these things. But here we say the task force shall do things and they have to do it in conjunction with the agency. And I'm just not sure what in conjunction means.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. For me, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, given some of the complexity of it, and you put this group together, I feel like they would need that sort of agency support, if that makes sense. You've got a couple. You have 2 teachers, you have 2 school administrators, you have students, and I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but I feel like without the agency, it would be hard to do this kind of work. And so in conjunction, what that definition is, I guess I look to Mr. Desmarais on that. When you use that in conjunction with the agency, I mean,
I don't think you need this here. I can.
We're losing you, Jim.
Often you don't do. Sorry, I don't think you need to have this language about in conjunction with, because the agency is going to give support to the task force in any case, and the secretary is on the task force. So this language probably got picked up from other task force, other language, but I don't see why it has to be here.
Senator Perchlik, are you concerned that there might be that the task force might not have a level of independence that it needs if it has the agency involved? Is that at all concerning?
I guess it could be something like that, because I think that the support is there, because down below we say they shall have the administrative support.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know what it means. I think if everybody is in agreement, it'll be fine and it'll never come up. But if the task force members want to make recommendations that the agency doesn't like,
yeah,
could they then say, hey, we got to do this in conjunction? So
It's a good point. Yeah, go ahead.
I just didn't know what it meant, so I thought we should just make sure we're saying what we mean. Or meaning what we say.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. If they were to bring forward certain policies and the agency, doesn't want them, does the agency then sort of trump those recommendations? Should it be? I mean, I'm just trying to think to we talked a little bit about this with literacy also, in other creations of these kinds of task forces and things. Do they usually have a level of independence from other agencies?
Yeah, like right now I'm on that after-school task force.
Yeah.
We have the support. AOE is doing a lot of the work, but we're not issuing a report in conjunction with the agency of education. We're just issuing a report of the task force.
Yeah, and as I think of, the Act 250, the 50-year thing, it was similar. There was that independence from the Agency of Natural Resources. They were there to support us, but it was the task force that, if you will, the group that that issued the report. Senator Hooker.
That make the recommendations.
That make the recommendations.
What's the purpose of the task force if it isn't to be independent and make recommendations, I guess?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm still, and as far as support from the agency, I guess I'll go back to the analyzing the data. And maybe that's where the support from the agency comes in. The task force hands over the data is analyzed. I don't know if that, is that kosher? I don't know if that's the way it's done, but it just seems to me when we talk about analyzing data and we're looking for, people to do it and time spent on it, there's going to be some cost incurred there. So who's going to pick up that tab?
Yeah, Senator Perchlik.
On that point, analyze could mean very different things. I mean, there's very complicated analysis, but then there's also just tallying up the numbers. That's analysis. You could just say, okay, this, the numbers underneath there, just say, you're just like telling us what the numbers are. So the analysis could be like taking all the data and putting it into a table, or it could be kind of running it through a model or something. So
yeah. It could be also that we're not looking to have it analyzed, but just shared.
Yeah, I don't know if analyze is the right word or not.
Right. More like, brought to light, focused on. Whatever,
yeah.
So that we know what we're talking about. Because otherwise, it just, we talk about this expulsions being a pipeline to corrections. I mean, is that the type of analysis we want? Do we want to see how many kids end up?
Right.
How far does this task force, how far does the charge for this task force go?
It's a really good point. I'm glad we're talking about it. I was thinking a little bit about it last night, just looking at the makeup of the task force to analyze what exactly do we mean. I am more inclined to collect the data and share the data. I mean, a lot of research has already been done out there. Data has been analyzed across the United States that shows, the trends that we're trying to stop. So I think, I don't know how others feel, but maybe it is reporting the data. And I just don't see this task force sitting around within 6 meetings to analyze data. And then if we use the word analyze to what end? Senator Lyons.
Maybe we're going to ask them to offer suggestions about how the data might be analyzed and used in a next step. So this is a group, as you said, that first of all, they don't have the resources to do all the work that's needed.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this could be a Herculean task, but maybe they would have some thoughts about identifying next steps to analyze the data to help develop appropriate statewide local policies. So, I mean,
Well,
something like that. They're
Yeah,
looking at,
so we have them submitting a written report and with the findings, which is basically the
Yeah.
data, and addressing and coming up with legislative idea or possible
Right.
recommendations for legislative action. So that kind of feels good to me. Senator Hooker?
And maybe it's just a question of the frequency, you know, how often is this happening, and comparing it to data that's already been collected and analyzed, and, you know, where do we want to go from there? You know, this is the frequency of these actions within our school systems.
Yeah.
How, you know, according to different either benchmarks or groups, and then what do we do with that?
Yeah, and I'm inclined to think that that's even too much for a group that's meeting 6 times to do. I think what we do is, as we have, submit a report, which is, you know, submit the data that's collected,
and suggest next
and
steps.
suggest the recommendations for legislative action. I mean, that's really, otherwise, I don't know how we get anywhere. I mean, we'll take that data and we'll take their suggestions. They're going to come back to both committees in the House and Senate and report this information. And that's going to be knowledge and helpful for all of us to know. Senator Perchley.
Yeah, and with what you said there and thinking about it, I think if we just say compile instead of analyze, I mean, they can still analyze it on their own to meet the other things we're asking them to. But if we say compile, both in the 2 instances, then analyzes in that paragraph, change to compile, that works for me.
Yeah, that makes me feel much more comfortable as well. Senator Lyons?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, Senator Hooker?
Mm-hmm.
Just going down here, Senator Terenzini, Senator Chittenden. Okay. So compile that data. Okay. Jim, how does that feel to you?
That's fine. Yep.
Okay. And then I think we also, that kind of eliminates Jim's concern about how, you know, that expense in terms of analyzing, would it be, they're just compiling it and they're giving recommendations. So that is a change, as well as Senator Lyons' suggestion referencing the report on youth risk behavior. What do we want to do with, you know, and that also, to me, it makes me feel more comfortable separating the agency from the task force. In other words, getting rid of the word in conjunction. Again, we'll let the task force do their work. So, Jim, I think the task force will make recommendations to end suspensions and expulsions. It doesn't need to be in conjunction with the agency. They will have the agency's support as outlined in this bill, but I think it does create a conflict if the agency disagrees with the direction or some of the recommendations. This is an independence group. They have the agency's support. They're only meeting 6 times. They're compiling data and making recommendations, removing the analysis piece. We, as the legislature, can direct the agency, or the agency may do analysis on this.
Can I ask this question?
bet.
That I've lost touch with which task force we talked about yesterday, and who's being elected chair here, how the chair is chosen, and then we don't need terms for this, but certainly we don't want the Secretary of Education being the chair of the task force. But so, is there anything in here about the organization?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So on page 7, let's go there.
Okay, because I haven't put it up on my iPad.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it's right here. So let me just
Okay.
pull up.
So it basically, so the Secretary of Education will call the first meeting. And it says the task force shall select a chair from its members.
Okay.
And then it goes on to talk about quorum requirements, and the number of times it meets. And then then we get into the assistants. It'll have the administrative, technical, and legal assistance from the Agency of Education.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Senator Lyons. Yesterday we talked, as we'll see when we look at literacy, we made
Yeah.
the new director of,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Jim, do you have enough to go on for, to get us another draft?
I do. Let's just finish up with the bill.
Yep. Please.
I'm not sure that we've gone through the whole thing, so we've certainly gone through this a lot. Yeah, okay, we've been there. So let's see if we've made any changes. Okay, fix that. Analysis. Okay, this is a change from the last draft, clarifying that a school may expel the student if the student poses a threat of harm or danger to the school, to others in the school.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then that was it. Yep. So I can update that draft.
Okay. Jim, just in terms of us trying to possibly move things along today, if we were to take a break, is that possible for you to work on that and then come back? And then we'll do this again and then move on.
Oh, of course.
Does that work?
Sure, of course. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So committee, why don't we then break? It gives people an opportunity to review things. And Jim will come back at 2:30 and look at, if it works for you, Jim,
Yep.
a clean draft and see what the committee's feeling is at that point.
Chair Kivian,
Yeah, please.
2:30 is the Tim Ash event I was planning to attend.
Right. Right. Good reminder. What if we
Keep working.
keep working for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, and we'll set this aside and we'll move on to literacy and kind of make our way through that. And then we'll do the Tim Ash event. Senator Terenzini, you weren't here yesterday. There is an event for the former pro tem. They're a painting.
I hope he's not watching.
I hope he's not watching as well. And anyhow, that event is going to go from 2:30 until about 2:50. So feel free to either stretch or attend or both. Okay, so that feels to me, and I may be the only one that loves this kind of stage of the work, but it does feel better. It really feels tighter and better. And certainly as we go through this, it makes me more comfortable as we raise the questions because we'll get the answers now and fix things before another committee or we get asked questions on the floor. So with that, Jim,
Okay.
you want to bring us through literacy. And this is draft, I have 6.1.
Yes. I've got 6.12. Just trying to make sure I got the right document to open. 45. Yeah, this one.
And please
Yeah.
go ahead and begin. Senator Hooker, you have the floor. I'm just going to use the washroom, or you have the power.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. All right. So for the record, Jim Damery, Liz Council, we're walking to draft 6.1 of your literacy bill. So I'll just go through changes.
Okay.
Actually, Jim, before I walk all the way down the hall to the washroom, would you be so kind as to bring us through the whole bill? Senator Terenzini, it's not only because of Senator Terenzini, but I think just an overall review before we move forward with it,
Sure.
I think is just helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we're starting with findings, and you're talking about the implementation of Act 173, which is reforming special education, and the DMG report, and some of those findings about literacy outcomes. So you're talking about these three areas here. I won't read them, but And then it goes on to talk about the data, indicate that we need to improve our literacy outcomes. So you have some examples of that. And then we go into COVID, saying it's getting worse because of COVID-19. Then we go on to the purpose, which is to continue the ongoing work to improve the literacy for all students in the state, while recognizing that achieving this goal will require a multi-year and multi-dimensional effort, requiring continued focus by the General Assembly administration and school leaders. Then we have the grant funding. So we have a $3 million appropriation. Again, we have a bracket here because we're not sure where it's coming from. So we'll have to come back to that. And that will be used to have the agency provide grants to SUs and school supervisory districts on behalf of their member school districts to provide professional development for teachers and methods of teaching literacy. Agency will administer the grant program, determine which SDs and SUs are eligible based on its assessment of relative need, taking into account the following factors across applicants: literacy assessments of students, the number of literary instructors per enrolled students, the percentage of students eligible for free or reduced price meals, the percentage of students who are English language learners, that's new, came from Chelsea, and 5 discrepancies in outcome data on literacy for students from historically underserved populations, including to the extent that the data is available in compliance with privacy laws, students who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and students on IEPs. And 6, the extent to which teacher professional development is integrated with a multi-tiered system of supports. So those are the criteria upon which the Secretary will grant funding. Then we have a staffing section saying that the following position is created: 1 full-time director level classified position to serve as statewide literacy coordinator in the offices of the Secretary. New language: the person hired as the statewide literacy coordinator shall hold a master's level degree or have equivalent expertise based on work experience in the field of evidence-based literacy instruction. The appropriation for that is $150,000. Section 5 amends existing statute 2903, which is a statute dealing with preventing failure, but we're focusing on reading, and you're focusing on literacy. So this amends that section to give it the framework that you're now using. So essentially what we're doing here is just replacing the word reading with literacy. So I won't go through all this, but we're updating this statute to conform with your framework around literacy.
So Jim, if I could just interrupt there for a moment. Last night when I was looking at this, so this is, we are just updating the statute here, correct? Getting, eliminating reading, making some other technical changes, and I guess a few policy changes. Well, no, not too much. And this recommendation came from whom? This section, do you remember?
From me. From me, because when Secretary French mentioned this section, I was unaware of it. And when I read it, I realized that it's not fitting into the framework you're using.
Got it.
I also it has the vision, or the plan, the vision is here. Where is it? State board will develop a plan.
Yep.
So we have a lot of language in this bill around this plan.
Yep.
So updating it to make sure that it fits in with what you want to do here.
Great. That's very helpful.
Yep.
Senator Hooker?
Senator Campion, I don't know. I think you received an email last night, as I did, from Mr. Hobson, perhaps, and talking about when this statute was last updated, because I don't know if I spoke in error, but I thought I heard the secretary saying that it hadn't been updated since 2009. And I was told that I believe it's the School Board Association had looked at it and worked on it in 2019. So I just want to clarify, get a clear reading on when that statute was updated. And
I think that-
thought this was in, oh, go ahead, Jim.
So I think there's two things happening here. One is when the statute was last updated, but Secretary French, I think, was talking about when the plan that's required by the statute was last updated.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think he said the plan hasn't been updated since 2009. The statute, I have it in front of me. I can tell you, it was last amended in 2009.
Yeah, I think it's the, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't misspoken. So I think I was correct in saying that the secretary had cited 2009. And this was in regard to the fact that we had a plan in place where we were going to put a plan in place, ask for one to be created in this bill that we're proposing, and the secretary had said that there was already a literacy plan, and I think that's how we got to this point.
Correct.
That sounds accurate.
You had a requirement for a vision to be developed.
Yeah.
And he said, well, there's already a plan, which is basically a vision.
Okay.
Yeah, but it hasn't been maintained.
Okay. So I don't know if we want to take a look at the plan that was looked at in 2019. I don't know what effect it would have on this bill, but I'll look at it.
Okay, maybe, yeah, I'm a little bit unclear in terms of that, but let's continue, and then we can also have a conversation.
Wherever that plan is, this is going to be required to be updated. So this bill. Okay, so I missed a couple in the last iteration. I missed a couple of these changes from reading literacy, so I picked those up now. And yeah, then we use this definition of evidence-based literacy and instruction. This came over from Chelsea, so we're using this definition for this purpose. And then we have a new section 2903A, which is your new advisory council on literacy. This is your permanent council. Purpose is to advise the agency of education, the board, state board, and you on how to improve proficiency outcomes for all students in pre-K through grade 12 and how to sustain those outcomes. Membership is 18 members. 8 members, this is new language, who shall serve as ex officio members, and they're here. So we have, review it, we have the statewide literacy coordinator, the new one being hired. We have a member of the standards board. We have the V's right through here. And then we have 10 members who will serve, I said 2-year terms, but you could do 3 or whatever you want to do. So you have a rep appointed by the Vermont Curriculum Leaders Association, 4 teachers appointed by the Vermont NEA who teach literacy, one of whom should be a special ed literacy teacher, and at least two of whom shall teach literacy to students in pre-K through grade 3. You have 2 family members, guardians, or education surrogates of students who struggle or have struggled with literacy proficiency, appointed by the Vermont Family Network. You have 2 high school students or recent high school graduates who struggle or have struggled with literacy proficiency, appointed by AOE. And lastly, you have 1 member appointed by the Vermont Legal Aid Disability Law Project. C is new language, so the members who have 2-year terms. So a member with a term limit, so serve for a term of 2 years, and until a successor is appointed. A term shall begin on January 1st of the year of appointment, run to December 31 of the last year of the term. Terms of these members shall be staggered so that not all terms expire at the same time. A vacancy created before the expiration of a term should be filled in the same manner as the original appointment. And a member with a term limit shall not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. A member appointed to fill a vacancy created before the expiration of a term shall not be deemed to have served a term for the purpose of the subdivision. This language came from Imran, and it's used for the State Ethics Commission.
Okay.
And later in the bill, we'll go through.
I
I
think
was
we
going to say later in
might,
the bill, we'll come to a transitional.
yeah, I think we're going to pause there, Jim. I think it's a pretty good
Okay.
spot. So when we return, we'll pick up with powers and duties.
Yep.
Yep, powers and duties. So we'll come back, let's say at 5 minutes to 3, because it might run a little long. So let's say 2:55. And Jim, if you don't mind staying on, I'm gonna be a little late to the party, and you and I can chat for a minute. Okay, so we were, Jim, if you might continue. This is Senate Education on Friday the 25th. We'll continue looking at going through our literacy bill, and then we'll return to the revised school discipline advisory bill. And so we left off on page 9, powers and duty. And Jim, you probably already know this, that you are muted. I don't think you've even started. There we go.
I did not know that. Thank you.
No problem.
And that is the one document that I'm showing you. So let me stop that share. And let's find what I'm looking for. S16, yeah, that one there. Okay. Okay, so for the record, Jim Dameray, we are walking through draft 5.1 of S16, your amendment to it. And the changes are highlighted. So let's come down to.
Jim, sorry,
Yeah.
we're on literacy.
Oh, we're in literacy. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I figured we would just continue on literacy and then we would go back to that.
I am sorry.
apologize. Did
My
I
fault.
misspeak? I apologize.
said that.
I just thought while we were on,
No, you spoke.
we could just continue it and then
You
we
were.
to it.
Yeah, you were correct. Is that 07? Yep, here it is. Okay. Why is that so there? Sorry.
No problem.
Come on. Let's see. It's here. Yeah. Show that one. Why? I'm gonna hold on. I'm sorry. I have to close that document. It's really getting in the way.
No problem.
So let's close S16. Open. Okay.
Supposed to go sign away for Miro, so take as much time as you want, Jim. I'm going to use this as a reason that I didn't have to go stand out in the cold for a friend.
Okay, I'm almost there.
Oh, that's right. You guys have big elections.
Screen 2. God, it's confusing.
If it's easier, Jim, we can just follow on our iPads.
Well, it shouldn't be this hard, right? So let me try one more time.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Were we at powers and duties on
We're at powers and duties, yeah.
page
Yeah.
8?
Page 9, top of page 9, draft 6.1.
Okay, I'm having trouble. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Let me
If
try.
you can follow along, we've got draft 6.1 open, page 9, powers and duties. Probably even easier, Jim, this way.
Okay. All right, so I will just go from the written document. Okay.
Before we
Okay, powers and duties are
Oh,
on
one second.
page.
before we go on to powers and duty, Jim,
Yeah.
you talked about staggered terms. How do you affect that when everybody starts at once?
We'll come to that. That's the
Okay.
piece of session law we're coming to. Yep, yep. Okay, powers and duties are on page 9, line 3. So the council shall advise the agency of education, state board, and general assembly on how to improve proficiency outcomes and literacy for students in pre-K through grade 12 and how to sustain those outcomes, and shall advise the State Board of Education on how to update the statewide literacy plan required under section 2903, which we just went through earlier, and how to maintain that plan. 2, advise the agency of education on what services the agency should provide to school districts to support implementation of the plan, and on staffing levels and resources needed at the agency to support the statewide literacy coordinator. 3, develop a plan for collecting literacy-related data that informs literacy instructional practices, teacher professional development, what proficiencies and other skills should be measured through assessments, and how those assessments are incorporated into local assessment plans, and how to identify school progress in achieving literacy outcomes, including closing gaps for historically underserved populations. And lastly, 4, next page, to review literacy assessments and outcomes and provide ongoing advice as to how to continuously improve those outcomes and sustain that improvement. The report is due every year by December 15, and I've added a language at the end saying the report shall contain an executive summary, which shall not exceed 2 pages. And then F is the meetings. So we've added on line 12 that the statewide literacy coordinator at the agency shall serve as chair of the council, provided that until that position is filled, the council shall select a chair from among its members. Then we go on to page 11. Section 7 is the appropriation of $10,000 for the per diem and reimbursement. Section 8 is the agency baking that into their budget requests every year. Section 9 is on implementation of the council. This is a piece of session law to establish the staggering of the terms. So it says, A, the advisory council on literacy is established on August 1 of this year. Members of the council should be appointed on or before that date. And for members with term limits, their service in the council from the date of appointment through the end of this year shall not be counted toward their term limit. The terms go from January 1 every year to December 31st. So this interim period won't count against them. And then C, next page, in order to stagger the terms of the members of the council, the initial terms of the following members should be for 1 year. So you get 2 out of the 4 teachers, 1 out of the 2 family members, 1 out of the 2 students, and the member appointed by the Vermont Legal Aid Disability Law Project. So they'll have 1 year terms, and then that will stagger those terms going forward because everybody else has 2 year terms. And then, okay. Section 10 is on the literacy plan. So this requires the state board by December 1st of this year, in collaboration with the advisory council, to update the statewide literacy plan required under 2903. And next section on page 11 is the teacher prep programs. So before December 1 of this year, the agency, in collaboration with the Standards Board, shall review teacher prep programs to assess to what extent these programs provide teacher candidates to use evidence-based literacy instruction. And 2, review licensing and relicensing criteria as it pertains to literacy instruction. And the evidence-based literacy instruction definition is the same as we used earlier that came from Chelsea. And then you've got reports from the agency back to you. The first report due by December 15th of this year about that will have an executive summary, and the 2 further reports and 2 further years out, again, with an executive summary. And that's it.
Regarding the executive summary, that was a great discussion yesterday. The Senator Perchlik raised the question. In that language, where did you end up with getting that language from?
I sure, because I emailed Chrissy and Stephanie, and they weren't aware of that language. So
questions. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, if I would certainly entertain a motion if we want to move this bill.
I'll move it.
Okay. Senator Perchlik. Makes a motion to move the draft 6.1 of the Education Literacy Teacher Training Bill, Committee Bill. Any discussion, comments? Feeling it's comprehensive. Spent a lot of time on it. I think it gets us. It's going to take at least one other stop to appropriations, and it may even, as Senator Lyons mentioned yesterday, we might even have government ops just put their eye on it as well. Seeing no questions, comments, or discussion, Senator Perchlik, would you take the roll?
Yes, and this is S16, right?
Nope, this is the
literacy.
Yep, sorry, this is a committee bill.
So it'll have, what was the draft? Just
Draft 6.1.
6.1.
okay. Senator Chittenden.
I learned in Green Mountain Boys State you say aye, but everybody else said yes on the last one. So I'm going to say aye, but if you need me to say yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Senator Hooker.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator Terenzini.
Yes.
Senator Perchik votes aye. Chair, Senator Campion.
Aye. So that carries 6-0-0, and I'm happy to report, but unless somebody else also is eager to.
You've been doing all that work with approps and
Yeah.
makes a
feels
whole lot
good.
of sense.
Feels good. Great. So Jeannie, I will be the reporter.
And I will send you a clean copy after we're done.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so let's return to S16, the revised copy, see where senators are, what they're feeling at this point as it relates to School Discipline Advisory Council. After this, we will move on to having some introductory language on H81. Jim, if you are ready, I know you have posted new language, S16 draft 5.1. This is an amendment.
Do people have that? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. So I won't screen share. Okay, so I'll go through the highlighted changes for you. The first change will be on page 4. So page 4, line 7, it says the task force shall make recommendations so that in collaboration with AOE is gone. Line 9 now says it will compile data, not analyze. Line 18 adds school to school administrators. Page 5, line 8. Again, the task force shall, so it's not in collaboration with AOE. And then I've added on lines 10 and 11 that the task force, taking into account the Vermont Youth Risk Behavior Survey issued by the Department of Health, shall perform the following tasks. And then on page 6, line 5, again, you've got the word compile, and on line 7, you've got the word compile. And then lastly, I think, on page 8, line 2, we have the $15,000 appropriation without the brackets. And that is it.
I really like the brackets. Sorry.
So I think we've made some the good change from away from analyze to compile. This group will meet and hopefully move us in the direction of away from suspensions and expulsions. In other words, exclusionary disciplinary practices. Senator Chittenden, questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Is there anything else that anybody would want to do to the bill before we move it? Senator Perchlik, anything? Okay. Okay, so I would certainly welcome a motion. This will go to appropriations and possibly may even stop in judiciary. I don't know if judiciary will want to see it, but it's possible.
I move that the committee consider voting on S16 draft 5.1.
Moved by Senator Hooker, draft 5.1 of S16. Any questions, comments, discussion? Otherwise, Senator Perchlik, would you call the roll, please?
Senator Chittenden,
Aye.
Senator Hooker,
Aye.
Senator Lyons,
Yes.
Senator Terenzini,
No.
Senator Perchlik votes yes. Senator Campion,
Aye. So is that 510 or 501?
510.
510, thank you.
What does the third zero mean?
If you had not been here, it would have been 501, absent.
Can you abstain
Abstaining.
in the committee?
Great. If you no, because if you're here, it's like being in your seat in the chamber, and you can't abstain.
The only time you abstain is if you have a demonstrated conflict of interest.
Good point.
Yeah, so
Point. Yeah.
unless you've committed some disciplinary actions in school, can't do it.
Anybody interested in reporting school discipline? Advisory Council. Seeing none.
I'll do it if
Nobody has to do anything. I can happily do it. It's up to you, Senator Hooker.
I'll give it a try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll be there right alongside of you, 500% of the way, and happy to write up and do any edits or anything that you'd like that would be helpful. And And all of a sudden, if you change your mind between now and when Jeannie emails you, just say, hey, Brian, changed my mind. It's all yours. So, okay, thank you, committee. I think good work. Great work. Moving on, H81.
Okay, if I can hopefully show my screen on this one because it'll be helpful.
In fact, if we could, Jim, could we just take a quick stretch, just real 4-minute stretch? I don't think we're going to be too long on H81, so let's just come back in about 5 minutes. Thanks.
Okay. Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Senate Education. It is Friday afternoon, February 26th, and we are looking at H81, which was sent to us by the House last week. We have with us Representative Walls from, am I pronouncing that correctly, Tommy?
Yes, pronounced just like the dance.
Okay, Walls, perfect. From Barry Town?
City.
Barry City, thank you. Who I believe reported the bill on the House floor. And we have invited the representative in to give us an overview of why his committee took the bill up, the genesis of it, and your interest in us continuing that work. So with that, Representative, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to refer now and then to some remarks that I've written up. I thank the committee. I am Representative Tommy Waltz from Barry City. I'm here on behalf of the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee because we're the committee of jurisdiction for collective bargaining bills. And that's where why we had H81. H81 amends Act 11 of the 2018 special session. And what that act did was to create a 10-member commission to deal with negotiation of healthcare benefits for school employees. Okay, so that was back in 2018. And there are all kinds of details in that act we don't need to go into, but that commission was created. They did hold a round of negotiations. There was, for the very first time, a statewide agreement reached on school employee healthcare benefits, and that is now in effect. The next round of negotiations actually begins on April 1st. It's coming up. So there was a little bit of urgency in some pieces of this, but we're going to be okay. I think we've designed this so we don't have to worry too much about that April 1st deadline. I want to point out a couple of things before I get into the bill, and I'm only going to deal with a very high level look at the bill. First of all, I've been involved in school negotiations myself 4 times, twice as a union rep and twice as a school board member. And so as a result, I kind of know what's going on both sides, and I have a very deep faith in the negotiations process and a deep respect for that. And I really think that's an important piece of what we are dealing with here in H81. And I also want to stress, excuse me, it's my daughter sending me a message. I want to stress that H81 is a collective bargaining bill, and that's why we got it in our committee. It is not a healthcare bill, else it would have been on the healthcare committee. Okay, and so I want to be very clear on what 81 is about and what it's not about. It's not about healthcare, it's about collective bargaining. So they did negotiate under the terms of Act 11. And after the process, both sides agreed there were some flaws in the act, and they thought there should be some changes. And the Senate actually tackled that last biennium in S226, which I'm sure your committee looked at. I haven't looked at the entire history of 226, but it came out of the Senate with very strong support. I think it may have been unanimously voted out of the Senate. If I'm not right on that, I know it had extremely strong support.
Yeah, I think you're accurate there, Mr. Representative.
Right. So first of all, this is not going to be brand new territory for you. And secondly, you know that in the past, there was a lot of support for it. H81 as introduced is S226, word for word. It is S226. It came to our committee, and of course, it's no longer as introduced. We have made many changes to it, many amendments of varying degrees. And I know Legislative Counsel is going to walk you through the bill, and you will see all of those changes. I would like to highlight two changes that are significant in my high-level view of this. The first change is the inclusion of the Vermont Labor Relations Board as a potential arbitrator. In Act 11, it specified that there would be, if it reached that point, one arbitrator to be provided by the American Arbitration Association. What we have done is to add some flexibility to that process. And we've allowed three possibilities: to either have the one arbitrator or to have a three-member panel. And that three-member panel would have one member appointed by the employee side, one member appointed by the employer side, and the third member provided by the American Arbitration Association or the Vermont Labor Relations Board. And the Vermont Labor Relations Board was part of this discussion, and they are okay with that concept. So that is one major change that we made in the arbitration process. The other major change that we made, we think is more important, and we think it helps to protect the lowest paid employees. For bargaining purposes, school employees are divided into two groups: licensed employees and unlicensed employees. It's licensed employees, we have teachers, supervisors, administrators, and so forth. And the unlicensed group, you have paraprofessionals. It can vary from district to district, but it can be the paraprofessionals, it can be the cafeteria workers, the bus drivers, custodians, and so on. Clearly, those are very different income level groups. Unlicensed employees earn about 40% on average of what licensed employees earn. That's a huge wage gap between the two groups. And traditionally in school negotiations, those two groups have been treated very, very differently, both dealing with salary, obviously, but also with health benefits, working conditions, and so on. And so it's been a very cognizant, and in my experience, both for the school board and for the union, it's been a clear separation. Currently, licensed employees typically pay 20% of their health care premiums, and unlicensed employees typically pay 15 to 16% of the health care premiums. And that's in recognition of the different income levels. It's recognizing that unlicensed employees just don't have that much disposable income. Also, traditionally, there's a big gap in the out-of-pocket expenses. Unlicensed employees have traditionally been required to pay several $100s less in out-of-pocket expenses than licensed employees. Well, there was an issue in Act 11. Act 11 stipulated that all employees would eventually be treated the same, that all employees, regardless of which group they fell into, would pay the same premium share and the same out-of-pocket expenses. We found that in our committee to be contrary to past practice and patently unfair. If that went into effect, unlicensed employees would face a financial triple whammy. They would have one, an increase in their premium share, two, an increase in out-of-pocket expenses, and three, the regular increases in premiums. So this has been pitched, and you're going to hear this argument that doing that mandate that everybody pay the same out of pocket in the same premium share is a cost-cutting measure. And I find that wrong on a couple of levels and for a couple of reasons. First of all, is that neither the employees nor the employers have any control over the premium levels and the increases in premiums for health insurance benefits. Next year in FY22, the average VHI plan is going to increase 11.58%. One of the most popular plans is going to go up over 18%. I would argue if you want to control costs, that's where you got to look. And that's part of the reason why I think the argument that the mandate is a cost-cutting measure. And the other reason is that it's just a matter of practical logic. Let's say as a General Assembly, we decided we needed more revenue from the income tax. And we decided the way to do that was to put a surcharge on the income of everybody earning less than $25,000 a year. Totally illogical. But that is in effect what Act 11 would do. It would put the burden of this cost-cutting measure, in quotations, on the very lowest paid employees. And we think that just does not make any sense. We want to protect them. So Act 11 is a pretty radical idea, the whole idea of negotiating statewide. When I first negotiated in Vermont back in the 60s, this was a concept being floated around that we would negotiate on a statewide level. Well, it only took 50 some odd years to get there, but Act 11 did that. So when and both sides, decided when they used the process that there were flaws. And we think the biggest flaw of all is this one, is the mandate that treats licensed and unlicensed employees as if they were on the same financial footing, which they clearly are not. So we recommend that you take a good look at H81, that you pay special attention to that particular issue, the mandate. And I want you to know that it passed out of our committee on a 10-1-0 tripartisan vote. And in the House, it passed 96-36, largely a tripartisan vote. So what we believed, what we've done with H81, and it changes Act 11 by adding transparency, and you'll see when Ledge Council goes through that with you, what I mean by that. It also adds some flexibility and most of all, fairness. And we really hope that you will help us in protecting the lowest paid class of school employees as you consider the bill. So I'm here if you got any questions. I thank you for the consideration.
Sure. Senator Perschlick.
Sure. Representative Walls, one of the issues that came up last year on S226 was this issue about cost containment that the arbitrator has to consider. And,
right,
how did your committee, address that issue, or, how is that dealt with now in your bill compared to Act 11?
Well, in what sense we didn't have to do anything with it because it's already state law that the arbitrator must consider 5 financial considerations. One complaint that both sides had about the past process was the arbitrator's decision did not enumerate what they had considered and whether they had considered that. So we have made that change in H81. We have specified that the arbitrator's decision must specify that these issues have been addressed.
The cost issue.
So the arbitrator must be clear on what he based his decision on.
Okay. And what was the vote? You gave us the vote in the committee. What was the vote in the House? Or did you say that?
The committee was 10-1-0 and the House was 96-36.
Senator Chittenden.
So nice to meet you, Representative Waltz. Thank you for that walkthrough. believe that all the members of this committee have received a few correspondences from school boards over the last week or so. The multiples have a specific amendment that they're asking us to consider, which I just pasted into the chat of this window. I think I've been following what you've been saying, and some of it is connected with this, but is this language something you're familiar with that your committee directly addressed, or do you have any thoughts on it, or is this new to you and something that is just surfacing or bubbling since it's this bill has passed through the House?
Okay, I'm reading it on your chat right now. And that wording is a little bit different, but it is in the bill. It's not worded the same way.
Does it have actuarial value in the bill? I mean, because doing an actuarial analysis is quite expensive.
Senator Lyons, if you could explain what you mean by that, by the actuarial amount.
Well, I'm looking at that proposed amendment that Senator Chittenden sent out to everyone, and little a 2A says the actuarial value of the health benefits for the full term of the award. So if you do an actuarial analysis can be costly, and if you're doing two separate analyses, one from each side, that's very costly, I would think. And I mean, I'd leave that up to Jim to help us with that, or yeah.
Yeah, that language is not what we currently have. And I'm not sure what they're trying to get at there. Because the language we have, it says each side must reveal the full cost of what they're proposing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that gets at the same thing or not.
It's probably slightly different if you're going to look at relative values, but
So if I may, Chair?
Please.
That's what I'm struggling with, Representative Waltz, is I feel like what's in the bill is getting at this, but I'm not a lawyer. So Jim Demaray, I don't think we're voting on this today, but when we come back, I would love to know how you interpret this language, and Senator Lyons highlighting that actuary value. That's really helpful to know that you understand the cost implications of it. But this is what's in my inbox, and I was hoping to better understand how this language might or might not be attractive as a slight amendment.
I agree with you, Senator Chittenden. That's a good lawyer question. But I think we've got pretty plain language in the bill that they have to reveal the full costs of their plans.
Other questions for the representative?
I guess.
Please, Senator Hooker.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Representative Waltz. So you said that this isn't a healthcare bill, but it's a collective bargaining bill.
Right.
So can you, does this bill in itself have costs?
Yes, there is an appropriation because the members of the commission are entitled to per diem and expenses. And one of the things we did do, we doubled the number of allowable meetings from 10 to 20. The original appropriation was $17,500. So we've doubled that to $35,000 to cover the maximum allowable per diem and compensation. Now that does not mean that every member of the commission gets it. For example, on the employee side, they're entitled to release time. And if that release time is paid, then they're not entitled to the per diem and expenses. So what the actual cost will be, we don't know, but the appropriation is $35,000.
But this bill itself would allow lower paid workers to negotiate their health benefits separately from licensed workers?
I'm going to be careful on phrasing that. The employee side is 5 members on each side, okay? Mm-hmm. And on the employee side, there are 2 unions representing the licensed and unlicensed employees. Mm-hmm. And so they have representation on the commission. It's not like there's an unlicensed group of commissioners and a licensed group of commissioners. I just want to make sure you're clear on that.
But the negotiation would allow separate out-of-pocket expenses, separate premium costs and percentages.
As is the practice now. Yes, it would just continue current practice.
And this happened in the first round? This happened in the first
Yes, yes, there's still a differential. I know the attorney can correct me. I think the timeline in the original bill was 2024. That was the mandate that they would have to be paying. I might be wrong on that year, but I'm sure the attorney can help me out on that. And the original plan was to increase them 2% a year until they had reached, I guess you'd call it parity, but it really isn't, since they have very different income levels.
Okay. Thank you.
Senator Lyons.
No, my question is, did the bill go through appropriations? I mean, obviously, there's some money in here. And did they approve, are they going to put this into the budget, or has it been put somewhere already?
Appropriations approved it. I'm not sure.
Okay,
It comes out of the education fund, I assume. And I'm not sure. They just added it. I don't
yeah,
know.
probably,
I'm sorry.
okay. Yeah, so that'll be true, that'll true up when the big bill goes forward. Okay.
Any other questions for Representative Waltz? Okay, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. Great to see you. And we're going to turn it over now to our Ledge Counsel to take us through the bill. Again, as a reminder, this is walk through and get a basic understanding. I think everybody's inbox is being flooded with emails. So this will hopefully guide some of our work and help the committee make a decision with regard to what direction we want to go in. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, our committee, we got more emails on this than anything else.
Okay.
So be ready. You're going to
Okay.
get flooded. And thank you for your consideration.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day. Okay, Mr. Demaray.
Okay, so what I've done is I've prepared a side-by-side to show you S226 as it was passed out of Senate last year versus H81. So you can see the differences. Would that be helpful to go through that?
I don't know if it would be or not. It's a new day, if you will. I don't know if it's helpful to senators or not, particularly since we have two new senators on the committee.
Okay, let me just show you for a second what it looks like so you can
Okay.
at least understand what this is. And then we can go and look at the bill itself. So this is a side-by-side.
See.
S226 has passed last year by the Senate is on the left.
Yeah.
H81 is on the right. And what this does, which you can go through on your own, of course, if you want to, is it just highlights for you the changes that were made in H81 compared to what we passed last year in yellow.
Yeah, I'm inclined to
that's the way
think
this
that
works.
we should just stick with H81 at this point, just taking us through
Yep.
it and helping us to understand it. And it's good to have this as a reference. But even for me personally, given that everything that happened at the end before we all went home, it's I think just makes sense to focus on where we are now, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
So let me grab the bill. Interesting.
I would definitely love to see that side by side. I don't know how to get a copy of it. But.
It actually is in our.
It's posted.
It's on
Um,
our documents
yeah.
page. You got it.
Okay, I think this is it. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yep, okay. So for the record, Jim Demaray, we're walking through HA1 as passed by the House. And the first changes, which seem like a lot, go to how, well, before I won't talk about changes, I'll talk about the whole thing. So first of all, we have the definition of participating employee, which is a school employee who is eligible for and has elected to receive health benefit coverage through a school employer. So school employee is a very important definition. It's the people basically being represented by the labor side here, represent school employees. And what happened in the original this was passed back in 2018 in Act 11. And the definition of school employee as passed then inadvertently omitted some employees. So this is a lot of language here. I won't go through it all right now, but basically all this is doing is ensuring that every single school employee is included in the definition, except for the superintendent, who is outside this and contracts separately with the supervisory union board. So they're outside of this, but every other employee is now here included. School employer means a supervisory union or school district. And so those are defined terms. Then we go on. Unfortunately, what we have here, we have a bill that doesn't pick up the underlying language that's unchanged. So for people who are new to this, it's hard to walk through because these asterisks represent language that's not changing, but it's not here either to talk to you about. So maybe the way to start when we come back is to go through the current law and statute just so you understand the context better. But basically what this first section does is it creates the commission and then appoints 10 members. 5 are reps from school employees and 5 are reps from school employers. The reps of school employees are appointed 4 members from the Vermont NEA and 1 member appointed by, what's the name of the labor organization that we have 2 labor organizations in Vermont, and this is the second one. I can't recall the name right now.
AFT.
But 5 members are
Is it the-
AFT. Yeah, thank
Yep,
you.
okay.
Yeah. So you have 4 members appointed by the NEA and 1 member by the AFT. And then what's here again not shown is that the other 5 members are appointed by the Vermont School Boards Association. So that's the management side. Again, lots missing here, but the HA1 amends the removal of commission members language. It used to say that members of the commission may be removed only for cause by the commission. Now it says they may be removed by the appointing authority of the member without cause. So that means that the NEA can remove its members for any reason, and so can the School Boards Association. Compensation is for not more than 20 meetings a year. There is new language here about release time. So it says the school district, the employees, a member of the commission will release that member to serve in the commission. Staffing expenses, the commission can hire staff as it deems necessary. Rulemaking authority is here. And then this language has been added. This is for, in addition to the 10 permanent members, this allows for 4 alternate members. So 2 alternate members appointed by the school employees and 2 by the school employers. The term of the alternate member will be 6 years. That's the same term as the permanent members. They can only serve in the absence of an appointed member. So they're there to observe, but if a permanent member is there, they can step in and participate. They can be removed by the whoever appointed them. If there's a vacancy, they're filled by whoever appointed them. And yeah, they can be removed without cause. So where do we have this? Hold on. Oh, okay. That's just there's removal. They can reappoint, and they can remove without cause. Again, the NEA, their members, and labor groups, their members. Funding request. This is just the $35,000 for per diem and reimbursement. And this is just in the governor to include it in his budget every year, so it's baked in when it comes over. And then there's appropriation for this year to pay that amount for per diem and reimbursement. So the duties of the commission are to determine, so let me back up. VHI offers the plans. VHI is responsible for the plans. The commission is not. So when there's those gold, silver, platinum, whatever plans are issued by VHI, the commission is not establishing the plans. They are determining the percentage of the premium in all pockets for those plans. Okay, so that's what the responsibility is to do. So the premium responsibility has to be in effect for the entire plan year. The employer is responsible for paying on behalf of its employees the applicable percentage of the premium costs. And then this is a big change here. So this here, striking out 3, what's being struck out says the premium responsibility percentages for each plan tier should be the same for all participating employees. So in the first round of negotiation under session law, the commission was allowed to have flexibility in terms of setting these percentages higher or lower depending upon income, for example, of those employees. But then it's supposed to go after that to this language here, which is basically not to allow that to be bargainable. However, this strikeout changes that back so they can bargain over the premium split for different tiers of employees. That's a big change. And then the commission will determine the amount of out-of-pocket expenses on a calendar year basis. And again, this is important. It's been struck out. But again, now with the strikeout, the commission can set different out-of-pocket percentages for different levels of employees. Okay. And then this language is new here. So it says the commission may negotiate a statewide grievance procedure for disputes concerning public school employee health benefits. So that would be grieved not at the local level. If they choose to, it's a may, not a shall. But if they set a statewide grievance procedure, then those grievances would go to a statewide grievance process. And then it says, in no case shall a school employee receive cash in lieu of receipt of healthcare benefits from one school employer while simultaneously receiving healthcare benefits from the same or another school employer. That's to avoid double dipping. And then G is new. It says accommodation shall be made for school employees whose workload is shared between more than one school employer and who may not otherwise qualify for healthcare benefits from only one school employer. The affected school employer shall determine the proportion of the shared costs of the health benefits. So if you have an employee who's employed in two different school districts part-time, they can then work out basically how to cover healthcare. Then section 5 here deals with negotiation. And what's happening here is negotiations have to begin on April 1. And they have to end with a final agreement by December 15th. We'll come on to that later on. This is backing up and saying that on before October 1 of the year prior to commencement of bargaining, the commission shall request from the parties data and information that anticipates needing, and that will be delivered by February 1. So if we use dates here for this year, this won't be in effect for this year because it's too late. But for this year's negotiation, how it would work is by October 1 of 2020, the commission would request information. The information would be delivered by February 1 of 2021, and then negotiations will begin on April 1. So it sets up the pre-process for negotiations. Now this is a new section 5A here is amending the very same section we just talked about. And that's because this goes into effect on passage. This goes into effect on December 31st, I believe. So it will be not used for this round, it'll be used for the next round negotiations when they happen. So a little confusing to have a section done twice in a row, but that's why, because they have different effective dates. What this is about is same language we went through, no difference there, but what this is about is adding, as Rep. Waltz mentioned, the Labor Relations Board as a potential arbitrator. So this says that the commission shall select a person, so as fact finder, talks about what the fact finder does, and then here it says the commission shall mutually agree on an arbitrator by April 5th to decide matters in dispute. But then there are two further options. So if they can't agree on an arbitrator, then they should either request the Vermont Labor Relations Board to decide all matters in dispute, or form a 3-member panel of arbitrators. So you have 3 options: single arbitrator as agreed, Labor Relations Board, or a 3-member panel of arbitrators. Selected as follows. 1 by the school employees, and this language from a list prepared by the American Arbitration Association has been struck. 1 selected by the reps of school employers, and the third is a member appointed by the American Arbitration Association. And then it goes on here just to again reference the VLRB again. So then 2105 is about dispute resolution, and section 6 has some changes in terms of the process. So it says here that the reps of school employees and employers shall submit to the arbitrator or arbitrators their last best offer on issues remaining in dispute prior to the arbitration hearing. The arbitrator or tour shall select one of the last best offers without amendment, submitted by the parties prior to the arbitration hearing in its entirety. The parties shall not be permitted to modify their last best offers post-hearing, and prior to the issuance of the decision, the arbitrator or arbitrators, nothing shall prohibit the parties from settling the matter in dispute. And then we get into the cost side, and this is where Rep. Ross was talking to Senator Chittenden about this a bit. So it says the arbitrator or tour shall hold a hearing at which members shall submit their relevant events documents and material, including a cost estimate for the term of the proposal, with a breakdown of costs borne by employers and costs borne by employees. And then it goes on to say the arbitrator or tour shall issue a written decision within 30 days after the hearing, providing a full explication of the basis for the decision. It will be final and binding, and subject to ratification. And then upon majority of the employer or employee members, they can ask for Superior Court to review if there are some misdeeds done, basically bad faith, which is missing here because it's at the stars. So Section 6 goes into effect on passage. It's amending Section 2105, and just like before, there's another amendment to 2105, 6A, that goes into effect at the end of this year. So this won't apply for this round of bargaining. Now, all this is doing is picking up these references to the VLRB. So a lot of changes here, but they're all basically around adding in the VLRB as an option for future negotiations. So I won't go through all that, but you can just see those references as we scroll through. Okay, and that's the end. The effective dates on those sections, they're going to affect in January 1 of next year. So I said December 31st, but it's actually January 1. And that's all about having the VLRB involved in future negotiations, or an option to use. And the remaining sections go into effect on passage.
Senator Perschlick, please.
Jim, I had a question on how they decide. This is on page 8 at the bottom, going into page 9. If they can't agree on an arbiter, then they have 3 options. But it seems like if they can't agree on an arbitrator, how do they decide on which of the 3 options to do?
Let's go back and look at the language.
Like, this doesn't have line numbers, but very bottom that.
So here it is right here. So first, they try to agree on an arbitrator.
Yeah.
If they can't do that, then the commission will either request the Relations Board or a three-member panel. And the way that the commission votes is a vote of the commission has to have a majority vote of the 5 members on each side. So they would have to vote on which way they want to go here between the VLRB or a 3-member panel.
Okay, so the arbitrator has to be by consensus, but isn't there a even number on both sides?
They have even number on both sides. In order to agree something, 3 out of the 5 members of each side have to agree to it.
So, but could we get into a situation where they don't agree on an arbiter, and then they can't agree on whether they should do the VLRB or the other 2 options? What happens then?
I guess that's possible. That isn't addressed here.
Okay, good point. Senator Perschlick?
No, that's it. That was my only question.
Jim, if you would remove that so we can just, there we go, that way I can see everybody, thanks. Questions for Mr. Desmarais, realizing this is just a walkthrough. This is something I think we'll all have to dig into a little bit over the week, and I'll touch base to get a sense of where the pro tem is on this in terms of moving it. There was talk about moving it before crossover. And so I'll talk with her and also all of you during the week. Senator Hooker and the Senator Lyons.
So this bill, even if we passed it, wouldn't affect this year's negotiations.
It would affect them this year,
If we
except for,
passed-
it would affect them this year, except for those provisions bringing in the Labor Relations Board as an option.
I guess what I should have said was, if we don't pass it, then things are going to stay as they are, and all of the employees will be treated equally or the same, if not equal.
Correct.
Okay. And is there a possibility of having a default to address Senator Perchlik's concern of if they can't decide on an arbitrator?
I'm sure there are ways of addressing that. I'm not aware of what they may be. But yes, I'm sure there's ways we can, you know, it's a policy question in terms of how they work.
Senator Hooker, did you have a follow-up? Senator Lyons?
I think I just forgot my question. No, it just, there's a lot here. I think that April 1st is what we heard is the deadline for beginning the process. So we passed this bill last year. I guess that was my underlying question.
You did.
Yeah.
S2 to 6, and that side by side, I showed you has the
Yes.
differences. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but did it come out of the Education Committee?
It did.
It did. Okay. Well,
I believe Senator Perchlik was the
Yeah.
presenter. I could be wrong on that. Might have been.
okay.
Yeah, last year we did work on it. I was the bill sponsor and presenter.
And then the question is also the recommendations that we're getting from superintendents and school boards is what Senator Chittenden has posted. And there are some costs, I think, embedded in that request. It's a pretty detailed request. So I'm going to have to go through and look at the bill next week and think about it. But given that this really is a short timeline to get everything turned around. So I think we should,
very short time.
we should get it completed. Yeah.
Senator Chittenden.
Just to be clear, I offer it not as an endorsement, as just something I'm trying to understand how much it's already been considered. But what I heard from representative that came to us today is that this seems to be new language. So I don't know how to dig into it deeper, but I would welcome more advice from Jim as to how that language, what implications, where it would fit, and whether or not it's worth considering.
You know, actually, it would be interesting to understand what this proposal means in terms of time and cost. Because when you ask for actuarial value, that's slightly different from asking for costs. So it's the benefit, it's the value of the specific plan that people are getting relative to other plans. And so, yeah, I think I don't know whether we want to dig that far or not. I'd just like to know how much would that cost to do during a negotiation. And then the other question I have is, how frequently are these contracts, healthcare contracts, negotiated? Is it every other year or every third year?
I think the first contract was for 2 years, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any change to that in this bill?
No.
Okay.
Senator Hooker.
Doesn't it depend on I don't know how this relates to regular contracts, but if you have a contract that's for 2 years, wouldn't the healthcare piece of?
Healthcare is separate now. I mean,
Okay.
this will bind everybody for that period of time. So then there will be cost implications for each school district and their
Mhm.
contracts.
And a question for Senator Perchlik. Last year, when you were considering this, you didn't consider the difference in incomes. This is or did you talk about it?
We did. We did include that in S226. My memory that we wanted to make sure that they could negotiate that.
But it didn't come out that
Well,
way.
Well, the bill didn't pass, but the first negotiation they were allowed to do it because it was like, as Representative Waltz, it was something that was going to happen in the future. So they said, okay, this first time you can do it that way, but in the future you won't be able to unless the law is changed. So they came back after the negotiation and asked for that change in preparation for this next negotiation, but it didn't pass last year, so it'd have to pass this year for them to be allowed to negotiate different, co-pays based on income. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Senator Persick.
And on the cost, cost containment, if you want to call it that, but we heard a lot of testimony about this last year, and it wasn't in the bill, but it's in the law that the arbitrator does have to consider what the cost of these healthcare plans are basically on the school boards. What's the ability of the state and the school districts to cover this cost? So it is part of the calculations. I understand some of the school boards want a much more rigorous test that they have to kind of weigh them, but it's part of the calculus now.
The point Senator Persick just raised, what I'm trying to understand better is then that's what I'm wrestling with, but I'll do my research and homework this coming week.
Any other questions at this point for Mr. Desmarais? This is, I think we all need to have a careful look at and see what direction we want to move in and under what time frame do we want to do so.
So I'm going to stick with the concept that this is an arbitration bill, that it's not a healthcare bill. And the more we dive into premium analysis, the more it becomes a healthcare bill.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's time sensitive.
Yeah.
Right.
Date.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this, or anything else that we've discussed? Okay. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great week. Got a lot done. I hope everybody has a great week. Feel free to be in touch with any questions as we move forward. I know you're all, it's not really a break, but hopefully everybody, as Senator Clarkson said on the floor today, can get a little bit of rest. So really appreciate everybody's help, and we'll see you all soon.